Good evening. Welcome to this virtual candidate forum. Welcome League members, attendees, and our candidate guest, Mr. Jon Green, Mr. Phil Hemingway, and Mr. Brian Campbell. I am Hazel Seaba, a member of the League of Women Voters of Johnson County, and I will be the moderator for the forum this evening. To improve the viewing and audio experience for everyone tonight, I would like to ask you to mute your microphone and turn off your video. Thank you. The League of Women Voters is a volunteer, nonpartisan organization that neither supports nor opposes any party or candidate. The League works to not only register voters, but also to provide them with information on topics to assist their participation in government. We do not take positions, and we do take positions, but only after considerable study of the issues, and we act to influence decision makers on those issues. Membership is open to anyone over 16 years of age or older. Join us. We can use your time and your talent. Democracy works best when more people are involved. The views expressed in this forum are those of the candidates. All viable candidates have been invited to participate. The format for this evening is as follows. After candidates have been introduced, they will have 2 minutes for opening remarks. Next, I will pose questions from the League of Women Voters. I believe we have 3 questions tonight. Persons attending this forum on Zoom are invited to pose their own questions in the chat. As the moderator, I will pose your questions to the candidates after they have responded to the initial 3 questions. All candidates will be invited to respond to each question that's asked. Each candidate will have 1 minute to respond to each question. There will not be time for rebuttals. We are scheduled for 1 hour. Near the end of our scheduled time for this event, and I am estimating that's going to be about 7:45, each candidate will have 2 minutes for some closing remarks. Speaking order will be rotated throughout the evening. Jean Donham, a League member, is our timekeeper. She will be raising cards to alert the candidates when their time is about up and when it is up. Tonight we have 3 candidates. They are running for the Johnson County Board of Supervisors seat that was vacated by Supervisor Janelle Reddick. Our candidates are Jon Green, Phil Hemingway, and Brian Campbell. So, let's begin with the 2-minute opening statements, starting first with Mr. Jon Green.
Thank you, Hazel. Thank you to the League for putting this together and all of the important work that you folks do. Thank you to everyone listening tonight. Thank you to Phil. Thank you to Brian for being candidates. I firmly believe that every race is a better race when it is contested by multiple candidates. My name is Jon Green. I live in Lone Tree. I've lived here and in Nichols over in Muscatine County most of my life, although I am originally from Wyoming. My most recent political experience was I was the mayor of Lone Tree in 2018 and 2019. I served 1 full term. Galen, to your question, I did not resign. I served the full term, but I determined that I was interested in hiring a city manager, someone who could do the job full time, because Lone Tree mayor position only paid $1,000 a year. That's one of the reasons that I'm interested in running for supervisors, because it does pay a salary sufficient that it can be a full-time job. Some of the things that I think that are important for the supervisors to address are, of course, the ongoing COVID crisis and how we are now entering into our COVID recovery. The previous year was a difficult year for all of us, but it's been much harder for some than others. For folks who've been able to work from home like me, it's just been a socially traumatic year, and I've been able to remain safe, thankfully. But for a lot of folks, it hasn't been that easy. And so we've got significant resources coming in from the federal government for COVID relief. And we need to ensure that those resources go equitably to those folks who need assistance the most. Those who were harmed the most must be helped the most. Thank you, and I look forward to answering your questions tonight. Godspeed.
Thank you. And next, Mr. Hemingway.
Thank you. I wish to thank the League for putting on this event. I appreciate all the work that it takes to do this, and thank you for that. I'm Phil Hemingway. I was born in Mercy Hospital here in Iowa City, and grew up on my family's farm between Morris and Oasis. I farmed with my father and brother out of high school. When I was in 4-H, I showed livestock at the 4-H fairgrounds. We raised corn and beans, alfalfa, cattle and hogs. I got a very great opportunity in the 80s to manage Roy Carver's cattle ranch in Belize, Central America, the largest cattle ranch there. And that's where I met my future wife, Anita, and had a great experience there working with a diversity of different people and working in a foreign land and understanding all of their regulations and things that way. I came back. I worked in Africa and in the former Soviet Union. I was elected to the Iowa City School Board in 2015, correcting information. I served a full term as well, contrary to the Press Citizen. And I was able to get ag education FFA in our schools for the first time ever, was able to get pesticides out of our classroom and on our school grounds, and was instrumental with community members in writing a policy and for inclusive playgrounds at a time when the school district was being investigated by the DOJ. I look to bring a new voice and to break the status quo of the Board of Supervisors.
Thank you. And now, Mr. Campbell.
Hello. I want to thank the League, all the people here that want to watch us talk, and both candidates as well. I want to start out just by explaining to the people why I decided to run. I've been a lifelong Democrat, been part of the Central Committee. My parents were part of the Central Committee. Just to kind of tell a quick story as to kind of what illustrates why I'm here. It all started about 3 or 4 years ago. Pat Hayden and I would be sitting in the back of the Central Committee meetings, and literally nobody knew who we were. And we just sit back there and talk to each other. We shared a lot of ideas that were similar, and we talked about how we wanted to change this county and make it better for everyone, how everyone deserved a voice, and how we would go about doing that. So for a number of years, and when she decided to run for about 6 months, it was just her and I just talking every week about how we wanted to do things. And so I've been planning this for about 3 or 4 years. So this seemed like a good time to, throw my hat in the ring. When Janelle resigned, it was unfortunate, but it was also an opportunity. And me being a Democrat and sharing all the Democratic values of some of the supervisors and Pat as well, I just thought it was a great time. So thanks for having me.
Thank you. Now to our questions. Recall that you will have 1 minute to respond to each question. And I'm going to read the first question. Which issue facing the Board of Supervisors most interests you? And for our order for the first question, I'm going to call on Mr. Green.
Thank you, Hazel. As I indicated in my opening, I think the most pressing issue facing the county right now is our rebound from the COVID crisis and ensuring that how big of a traumatic event this has been to all of us is something that the county focuses on improving for all of us and not merely going back to what was a broken status quo. We have a one-time opportunity with these American Rescue Plan dollars to really focus on making smart investments in both our physical infrastructure, but also in our human infrastructure to ensure that we are well positioned to be able to face whatever the future brings. And it also gives us an opportunity to write our own future. And so I think that's where our focus must be. Thank you.
Thank you. And next, what most interests you, Mr. Hemingway?
Yes, there's a lot of priorities facing Johnson County. Definitely bridging the rural and urban divide is a huge one, and it's recognized by the fact that all three candidates are coming at this race with a strong rural emphasis, something I have illustrated ever since I started running for the Board of Supervisors. Definitely with all this money coming in, we have got to spend it wisely. I have a proven track record as an elected official to the 5th largest school district in the state when I was the finance chairman. In fact, the Gazette, not my words, but the Gazette editorial board said that there is simply no other member of the school board with his tenacity or attention to detail, especially on fiscal matters. That may be important, especially with this huge influx of money coming into our county.
Thank you. And Mr. Campbell, what most interests you?
Actually, I agree with both candidates to an extent. I think the pandemic, because of the leaders we have now, will ultimately take care of itself. I think the rural divide between the city people and people in the country is another major issue that Phil touched upon. But I would go a little bit further and say that it's more of a social issue where we've got opposing groups that just don't want to work together or get along with each other. And my mantra is kind of like, let's end the hate between people and let's start beginning hope. And I think that's across all different kinds of issues where there's people on both sides. And we can take care of a pandemic given time, but the issue that divides people basically is one that's systemic and that we have to work on almost every single day.
Thank you. And question 2, what guidelines will you personally follow to balance the needs and interest of rural and urban populations in the county? Mr. Hemingway.
Yes, the rural residents of Johnson County need a voice, and it's been spoken about by the present supervisors quite often that they don't agree with us, and the board has spent a lot of time going after livestock producers, which wasn't really in their purview and was a state issue. And that was time and effort that could have been spent on other things. As an elected official with the school board, I hosted a Friday open house where anyone in the community could come and discuss school matters with me. As a board of supervisors, I will maintain that. When I was a school board member, I had Kurt Freese and Mike Carberry come over and discuss school issues with me. I have a proven record of working with everybody. And as a school board official, it was a nonpartisan position and you worked with everyone and you didn't care what party they were.
Thank you. Mr. Campbell.
Yeah, I kind of agree with Phil as well. I would say that the divide between the rural and the urban people is one that's not it's not that people don't have a voice. It's just that they don't have anybody to listen to them. And that's the problem when you're a leader, you should be a good listener to everyone. And I think that I'm capable of doing that because I have support from both sides of the aisle. I grew up on a farm. A lot of my friends and supporters are farmers. They've told me what their issues are. I work for the county. I've been elected twice in this county. So I've seen both sides of perspectives of these groups. And so I think somebody in the middle is needed in order to bring these people together where both sides can trust them. And I just think I'm the person to do that.
Okay, thank you. And what guidelines will you follow, Mr. Green?
Thank you. I don't know that there's so much of an urban-rural divide in Johnson County as the other folks vying for this office do. What I do think exists is a difficulty of communication. And that's not a dig at the present members of the Board of Supervisors. When I was mayor, I never had any issue where I could not talk to them, where they weren't receptive. If I asked for something from them, they were happy to help. I think what the issue is it helps when folks in the outlying areas of the county just see that they have someone representing them on the board, someone who they do see, daily, because when you live out in the boonies, you do run in different circles than the city folks do. But we also, we go to Iowa City all the time. And so we just need to bridge that divide. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And question number 3 from the league is, the Unified Development Ordinance was a major undertaking. Do you hope to see the board revisit any parts of it in the near term? If so, with what aim? Mr. Campbell.
Definitely. I think when it came about several years ago, the kind of put together a commission of various people and had listening posts, and a lot of those ideas from people never got implemented. For example, the 40-acre rule, where people need 40 acres in order to build a house for their family or their children, or that's kind of, it discourages family farms from keeping them in the family. What that leads to is people end up selling their farms, and then you've got what people call factory farms, because the only people that can afford to buy those farms are people with a lot of money who already own a lot of land. And that's a problem, because if that keeps going, you're going to have people leaving farming and leaving agriculture, and it's going to turn into almost a corporation of agriculture. And that's probably one of the biggest things that I think needs to be addressed with that, with the land use reform.
Thank you. Mr. Green.
Thank you. I actually agree with Mr. Campbell to a point, in that we do need to be advancing policies that encourage sustainable small farming operations. But it's more than that. It's not just that, we need to hold the line. The line has been collapsing over the past 40 years since Richard Nixon was president. And the whole farming thing was get bigger, get out. And that clearly is a failed way to look at things. We need to look at more sustainable, smaller farming, and we need to ensure that our larger operations in the county are behaving responsibly. In Lone Tree, we're building a $6 million wastewater facility plant. We're happy to do that. We want to have clean water. And I'd ask the same from our ag partners in the county.
Okay, and Mr. Hemingway.
Yes. Brian is right on. We have to revisit it, and definitely agriculture right now is going through an evolution, and there's a lot of niche farming, and Brian was correct in identifying that small farms are going to be growing at a larger rate than large farms. And we've got to provide and make sure that we have policies that help support that. That's why I push to have ag education and FFA in our schools. Anyone who has seen the students that participate in ag education, the vast majority don't come from farms, but they're interested in agribusiness, which is the largest business in the state. And we have to recognize that our economy in Johnson County, as well as the state, is reliant on agriculture, and we have to work with it instead of working against it.
Thank you. That completes the League of Women Voters 3 questions. And we'll now go to the questions that appear in the chat. And I'd like to remind the audience and League members in the audience that if you wish to ask a question, please type it into the chat and I'll address it from there with our candidates. The first question that I have now actually is aimed at 2 of the candidates. So I'm going to break the question up, and I think this might have been covered a little bit, but I am curious about why Hemingway resigned from the school board before his term was completed. So Mr. Hemingway, would you address that question again?
Well, I did address it in my introduction. The Press Citizen got it wrong. And I also want to clear something up. Running for county supervisor does not, the prerequisite is not a journalism degree from a college. I guess I'm the only one running this time that doesn't have one. But no, I've served a full term. It's very easy to look up. I missed 1 retreat in the 4 years that I was there. I spent 2 weeks, or every 2 weeks, I spent anywhere from 2 to 4 hours going over the district's bills, every receipt, every check. And that's why the Gazette made the statement that they did in 2018. I was there for many voluntary listening posts and things like that to meet with the students. I made routine visits to schools around the district. So that fact, or that is not a fact, that is false information. And I'm glad we get an opportunity to correct it. Thank you.
Okay, all right. And the other part of this question, again, and this would be good to, since the question did come up, it'd be good to address it. I am curious about why Green from the Lone Tree City Council resigned before his term was completed. So, Mr. Green.
Thank you, Hazel, and thank you, Galen. Indeed, I did serve my entire term. As I indicated during my introductory remarks, I felt that it was important to be able to spend, a considerable amount of time being mayor, which is why I pitched the city administrator position. But I did fill out my complete term, and now I'm interested in being a supervisor, because being a supervisor does bring with it more of a salary than being mayor of Lone Tree. It was $1,000 a year when I served as mayor. It's now $2,000 a year, because the city council who was serving with me saw how much time, how much effort, how much blood, sweat, and tears I brought to the position, and they understood the argument that it was useful to offer a little bit more money in order to try and attract quality candidates that would spend a lot of time working for Lone Tree.
Thank you. The next question is please describe your plans for the GuideLink Center, and we'll start with Mr. Green.
Thank you. The GuideLink Center is something that is personally important to me. I have friends and family that have been going through difficult times in terms of mental health. This past year has been hard on all of us, and it's understandable that everybody's mental health is reeling. The problem with the GuideLink Center isn't anything of what they do. It's that they don't have sufficient resources to be able to meet all of the needs that we have here in Johnson County. We should look at redirecting some of the money that we spend in the sheriff's office toward mental health, toward de-escalatory resources that are going to get folks help instead of just getting them sent to the county lockup. It's going to take work. It's going to be difficult, but it's important and necessary. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hemingway, would you address that question?
Yes, definitely. The center has been recognized by state officials as a model for the state to follow. A lot of credit goes to the present group of supervisors that work to make this a reality. And it's important to make sure that with the new funding formulas that are coming out, that it receives the funding that it needs, and that we make sure that it's a success that we all want it to be, because definitely the need is there. What we've gone through with the COVID pandemic has definitely created more issues with mental health and people being isolated. We're social beings, and we've got to get back to living. And it's important that we make that facility a success, and that we make sure that it fulfills the dream that we all want in providing the very necessary needs for our citizens.
Thank you. Mr. Campbell.
Yes, I actually agree with John in a respect. It does wonderful work there, but in order to accomplish things, you need the resources to do it. And I think, and I've always believed this because I've worked for the county, and I'm kind of, I've been studying a lot of the budgets and things that they put together on a yearly basis. And the biggest problem is trying to find the money for everybody that needs it in this county. And to Phil's point earlier about how he was a financial manager for the school board, to me, that's one of the key components of a supervisor, is trying to make do with what the money you're given and to spread it out to where it's going to do the most good. And so it takes really someone who's really astute at doing that, and who's studied it and who knows the territory to be able to make those things work. And if you know what you're doing, you can find the money to fund almost anything if you manage it properly. And I think that's what supervisors are. They're managers and they're budgeters, and they oversee personnel for the most part. And I think if you know what you're doing and you're competent, you can get the job done and make things like the GuideLink Center really successful.
Thank you. And new question. What are your thoughts about how to protect members of the public from gun violence now that the legislature has limited local government's ability to keep guns out of the public facilities like courthouses, libraries, and other public spaces? Mr. Hemingway.
Well, people, gun ownership and gun possession, or gun ownership is guaranteed in the Constitution. We definitely want to make sure that felons and people that cannot prove themselves to be safe with firearms do not have access to them. But you can look at areas that have very strict gun regulations, and they have very high, murder rates. And it's very important that the rights of an individual for self-defense are protected and allowed.
Thank you. Mr. Campbell. You're muted.
I'm sorry. I was saying that's a really tough question to answer. A lot of it depends on the public facility or the person that's managing the building or the facility. I also think it involves a lot of retraining with some of the people who police our city and our county. I don't think that the gun violence that's been going on in recent times is as necessary as it is. I think there's alternatives. There's an alternative and a safer way to handle issues like that. And it doesn't always mean that, you shoot first and ask questions later. But it's a very tough issue, and there's rights on both sides. And it's going to take cooperation from both sides to come to some kind of meeting where people can feel safe.
Thank you. Mr. Green.
Thank you. One point I want to first address is Phil's point about how jurisdictions with strong gun laws still have high crime rates. That's because guns come across borders from jurisdictions like ours that have got weak gun laws. That said, as disappointed as I am about the actions that the legislature has taken on gun-free zones in Iowa and licensing and all that, the fact of the matter is most gun violence is two things. It's either suicide or it's intimate partner violence. And so we can make significant headway regardless of what the legislature is up to if we target those two things. I'd hate for there to be a mass shooting in Johnson County, but we can make a hell of a big difference if we work on mental health, if we work on substance abuse, if we work on intimate partner violence. That'll move the ball. Thank you.
Thank you. New question. What actions will you take to combat the climate crisis on a county level? Starting with Mr. Campbell.
Yeah, I think that gets down to what we talked about earlier with the cooperation between the urban and the rural communities. I mean, how do you solve water quality or air quality or climate issues without having people on both sides working together? And who's going to bring those people together? I mean, for years, the people outside the city haven't shown the trust in the people who are running the county and really won't go out of their way to support them. Well, how do you fix that? You've got to have somebody who both sides can trust and somebody who understands each perspective, and in order to bring them together and find a solution that works, because the people that take care of the land, they've been doing it for generations, so they don't want people telling them how to do it. But yet again, if there's enough information that we can bring to them and say, hey, this is what we need to do together, let's try to get it done, I think you need somebody that's going to be able to do that.
Thank you. Mr. Green.
Thank you. I think the big issue here is that we have a lot of good programs for new construction, but we need to focus, most of us don't live in new construction. And so we need to continue to encourage not only efficiency programs in terms of updating your fixtures and whatnot, water conservation, but also in looking to improve, the quality of the insulation you have, getting new HVAC systems installed, that sort of thing. There's a lot of low-hanging fruit because most of these systems need periodic maintenance and replacement anyway, where we have an opportunity to make a pretty significant difference in stuff that's already needs to be done, is going to get done. And so I hope that we can work toward improving those opportunities. Thank you.
And Mr. Hemingway.
Yes, Brian is correct, and farmers my family's roots go back to 1860s here in Johnson County, and have been here continually. There's nothing that my brother on the home place wants to do that wants to be passed on to future generations. And agriculture is going to be crucial going forward in the climate discussion. And farmers are doing a lot with planting cover crops and doing different water quality issues to improve that. In the school district, we had the student organization that did a protest outside the superintendent's office for weeks on end. I was the only board member that came there in the day to meet with them and talk with them. We were able to do some things that way, but we all have a crucial role to play in making sure that we have clean air, clean water for all of us, for now and in the future.
Thank you. Next question. As the U.S. prepares to leave Afghanistan, it's anticipated that local sheriffs and police departments will again be offered discarded military equipment, from guns to tanks. How will you respond to offers that equipment from the federal government to our county's sheriff's departments? And start, Mr. Green.
Thank you. Full stop. Weapons of war have no business in policing. There's no reason that any jurisdiction domestically that is charged with policing, with public safety, has any business using any of this stuff. And so it should all be turned down. Doesn't take much of an answer.
Thank you. Mr. Hemingway.
Well, as a ASC certified master mechanic, and you're talking about, equipment, the county did purchase a bomb-proof vehicle. I kind of question, from a pure maintenance standpoint, even if it was given to us free, the cost of maintenance and upkeep on the thing could be more than what it's worth. But some counties do use surplus equipment for road maintenance and for dump trucks and things like that. So to completely rule it out would be foolish. As far as utilizing certain equipment that way, I'm gonna, the sheriff is an elected official. I have to oversee his budget, and he will be held accountable by the voters of the county as well. So what he feels he needs will be something that will undoubtedly come before the supervisors and will have to be taken into consideration.
Thank you. Mr. Campbell.
Yeah, I think this is an easy answer. I don't think weapons like that have really any place in the police department. People are going to have to be trained to use them. I'd rather spend the money and the time training the police officers and the deputies in actually how to deal with the citizens and how to help people who may not be criminals on the surface and really need help in other ways. I'd rather see, that kind of training and time and money spent in that respect than trying to train people to use weapons that they'll probably need. Like Phil said, that bomb machine, I don't think it's ever been used in 5 years. So really, what good is it? I think you're much better off putting that money and time into the people, citizens in this county who need it.
Thank you. Next question. In 2019, Johnson County created its future land map. What is your opinion of the results of that review? Mr. Hemingway.
Well, I think that, for a long time, the supervisors have felt they own the map. The River Junction issue comes to mind. I know there's some residents there who are unhappy with how the board ultimately resolved that issue. Definitely, we need community input, and we need community buy-in. And I think it's important that the residents have a say, and it's been alluded to earlier that, many people who own property have issues with how they're able to utilize it. And I think it's important that the Board of Supervisors recognize each individual's right to use their property in a way that they feel is best for them.
Thank you. And Mr. Campbell.
Yeah, I kind of agree with Phil. I think for years, I think the pervasive thinking was that the Northport corridor and the north section of the county was a development area, and the south and other parts were not as well. I think the map is not as much of a problem as its interpretation. If you look at the plan itself, they say, well, we want to separate commercial, agricultural, and residential. Well, that's fine, but in some places they choose not to do that. In other places they choose to do it. It's how they interpret it and how they enforce it, to me, that makes more of a difference, because, is it being done fairly? Is everybody being treated equally? And, the answer to that, in my opinion, is no. It just depends on who you are and who you know. And the map itself, the county is what it is. But the people who make the decisions, the board and the planning and zoning, I think they have to look at it more of an equitable thing where everybody's being treated the same and fairly. And that would go a long way towards making it a better plan, I think.
Thank you. Mr. Green.
Thank you. There are two things that are in tension, but that I think nonetheless most folks agree upon when it comes to land use policy. The first, which Phil and Brian spoke about, was that when you own property, you expect to be able to do what you want with it. But the second thing is, I think most of us also agree that it's important that we have zoning, that we have restrictions, that we look to sustainability, that we look for responsible land use that doesn't bother your neighbors. I am sympathetic to folks who don't like the 40-acre rule. I hear a lot about it when I was mayor of Lone Tree, just living down here. But on the other hand, I also know that if we get to tinkering with this too much, the thing I most care to avoid is having a bunch of hog confinements popping up all throughout the county. They're bad for us, they're bad for our neighbors, they're bad for everybody downstream. So I don't want to see that either.
Thank you. And new question. How can the county better respond to issues raised by Iowa Freedom Riders and other racial justice concerns? Mr. Campbell.
Well, that takes us back to my thinking about how everybody deserves a voice. I mean, people want somebody to listen to them. I mean, that's the biggest complaint that I hear. If you look at customer service in any kind of industry, people get frustrated because no one listens to them. And if we start listening to people, what happens? We start getting educated. And a lot of our problems come from the fact that certain groups don't understand what other groups are going through or what they deal with on a daily basis. And, if you get in there with, I don't care if it's freedom riders or farmers or anybody, you've got to have a platform where you can communicate and listen to each other and understand what people are going through. You can't make decisions that are good decisions unless you know the facts of what's actually going on. And so I think it's incumbent upon supervisors for any issue to just listen to whoever is out there and has a concern.
Thank you. Mr. Green.
Thank you. This is an important issue to me, albeit one that I know the supervisors have limited direct control over. But these folks, as represented by the Iowa Freedom Riders and the Black Lives Matter movement, these folks have been under the thumb of law enforcement for a long time. When, like the three of us, Brian, Phil, and I, we have a different relationship, a different experience with law enforcement than people of color do. And I think that it's important that we really look at that and we try and deprogram all the systemic violence and racism and oppression that are in our systems of governance beyond just law enforcement. And it's going to be a monumental undertaking, but we need to start.
Thank you. Mr. Hemingway.
Yes, as I think Brian was right on the communication aspect of this question. I have always made myself accessible to speak with people, and I have protected others' right of free speech, whether it be before the Coralville City Council or as a board member, defending a citizen's right to come and address grievances with the school board. It's important everybody have a voice, but it's also important that people respect the rule of law and respect law enforcement. When we have vandalization of public and private property and a children's hospital where children are getting needed cancer treatment, we need law enforcement to be able to protect those children from being terrorized by mobs that want to vandalize those properties. I want everyone to have a right to free speech and discuss the issues, and we need to do it, and we need to agree, we need to disagree agreeably, but the destruction of public and private property cannot be tolerated.
Okay. And a broad question here. As communities grow and attract more families and people into our county, what county-wide amenities will you support to make our county an attractive place to live, work, and play in? Let's start with Mr. Green.
Thank you. One of the big things, especially within the supervisor's purview, is we like bicycling in Johnson County. And if you come down to this end of the county, it can be difficult. There's a number of roadways, Wapsie, which is the north-south road straight out of Lone Tree here. It's in rough shape. It has a pencil-wide gravel shoulders, and it's just a dangerous road to be on if you're on a bike. It isn't that much better if you're in a car. So it's that sort of core infrastructure, the most basic, boring stuff that we need to pay attention to, and we need to make sure that we are spreading the love throughout the county, because Wapsie isn't even on the 5-year plan right now, last that I had looked at it, and that sort of stuff. It's the small stuff. Thank you.
And thank you.
Miss,
Okay.
One question.
Susie, can you mute that?
Miss, one question, miss.
Hi guys, how are you?
We are you talking Europe. Miss, ¿cómo hago para follar?
Should be muted. Mr. Hemingway.
Yes, could you do me a favor and rephrase the question? Repeat the question.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, we had a little interruption there.
No, I understand. And also I've got an opportunity. Brian kind of missed out on a question when Mr. Green and myself were correcting our policy. So let's make sure that he gets time.
Okay, let me repeat the question. As communities grow and attract more families and people to our county, what countywide amenities will you support to make our county an attractive place to live, work, and play in?
Yes, well, definitely the first thing is we have to be welcoming and we have to be safe. And we're all here for a reason. We love it. We have a great climate. We have great people, and we have beautiful land and beautiful opportunities here. But it also the opportunities have to be for everyone. I have a great friend, Henry Harper, who left the community because he was having difficulties getting employment, and he went back to East St. Louis. It's important that we have opportunities for everyone in our community, and that we're welcoming and recognize people have different customs, different traits, different beliefs, and we respect everyone's opportunity to come here and live and prosper and enjoy life.
Thank you. Mr. Campbell.
I think it's without a doubt broadband. I mean, this pandemic has shown us what kind of world we'll live in if we can't communicate and we can't meet face to face. I mean, there's people out there who can't get their benefits because things are being required to be done online now. Kids got to be schooled online. Some of them, I mean, what good is a Chromebook if you don't have Wi-Fi at home? Communication has reached a point where a lot of it is not done in person anymore. And if you don't have broadband, you know, for everybody in the county, then people are at a disadvantage, whether it's your children, whether it's people in need. I was a frontline employee during this whole pandemic. I saw firsthand how people who depended on benefits and things just to survive couldn't get the help that they needed because half the people were at home, or they had to make a phone call, you know, to somebody in Des Moines or somewhere and wait 2 or 3 days or even longer to get back in touch with them. So broadband to me is the biggest issue that this county needs to take care of, and an amenity that's so much needed.
Thank you. And we're at the point in tonight's program where we need to go to closing statements. Each candidate will now have 2 minutes to make a closing statement. We'll begin with Mr. Hemingway.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak, and I want to thank Mr. Green and Mr. Campbell for coming here and participating. We've shown that we can have a discussion and answer questions in a civil manner. I want people to consider what I have done in my public service with the schools. I want them to consider the many surveys and questionnaires I filled out. And one thing that kind of popped up on me when Mr. Green was talking about his pay as the mayor of Lone Tree. Boy, don't ever volunteer to be a school board member, because I got a $20 plaque, which I voted against when it came before me when it was in the consent agenda. I put all of that in for nothing. I don't look at this as a paycheck. I look at this as an opportunity to serve the county that I love. And it's important that we get people in there that aren't just, bureaucrats that essentially are just wanting to collect a tidy check and a pension. I love this county. I've lived here all my life. When I worked overseas, I still maintained a residence here. This is where I raised my daughter. She got a world-class education, and she's gone off into the world and is doing great things. I want to make sure that the next generation and future generations in this county have the same opportunity. And I think that people should look at my record and look at what I've actually done and not what I say I'm going to do. And I think it's important too. Maybe I watch, too much grit on TV, but, we need to make sure we get people that just aren't all hat and no cattle. We need people that are, get in there, do the work that's required, and make Johnson County better for everyone.
Thank you. Mr. Campbell.
Yeah, I think Phil hit it right on the head. I think, I don't know. I know he doesn't do this. I certainly don't do this for the money. I do a lot of volunteering for veterans, and I grow food for the local community. I put in my time and labor. I don't do that to get paid. I do that because that's what I enjoy doing, and people need it. My job with the county is to helping elderly and the disadvantaged and people get on with their lives and live a productive life. So to me, it's not about the money. It's about wanting to help people, knowing what people need. Because I work for the county, I see a lot of what goes on. I have ideas about what I think would make things better. I've been a Democrat for a long time. I worked with Pat Hayden on her steering committee. So I've been involved with the supervisors. And I think that my experience and the fact that, I'm doing this out of the love of helping people. So I want to thank everybody here, both candidates and all the people in the league as well. So I appreciate it and good luck to you.
Thank you. Mr. Green.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for your participation tonight. Thank you to the league for putting this on. I know we covered quite a bit of ground, but there's a lot of stuff we didn't have time to get to. So I have more detailed policies on my website, greenforjc.com, green like the color, FORJC.com. But I would be remiss to not just stop and address the criticism from Phil and Brian that I'm in this just for the paycheck. Public service is important to me, but I also do think that it is important that we pay our public servants a fair wage. Not because anybody's in this to get rich. None of us are. I would not make that accusation of anybody who holds office, but also because it provides an opportunity for everyone to run for office. Not all of us are fortunate enough to, be independently wealthy or to be retired drawing a pension. And so you have to pay for talent. You have to pay for people's time. And I think that's important. Leaving that aside, we have an awful lot of work to do over the next 20 some months of the remainder of this term. We have a lot to look forward to. It's an unsettled time, but there are many opportunities, and I am asking for your vote because I would like to work with you and, more importantly, for you, Johnson County, to ensure that we can maximize those opportunities and work toward a better future for all of Johnson County. Thank you, and hopefully come out and vote for on June 8th, or satellite voting or drive-through voting at the county building Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. Everyone have a wonderful evening. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you to the candidates. A special thank you to Iowa City's television staff for recording the event and live streaming it. The recording of this forum will be available on the Facebook page of the League of Women Voters. In addition, rebroadcast of the forum will be run on Iowa City Channel 4, Coral Vision, and North Liberty TV. See their respective websites for the program schedules. I would like to end with a reminder to all of you that the League of Women Voters website, vote411.org, I'll repeat that, vote411.org, provides extensive voter and election information for each state, not just Iowa.
I think it's
With that, good night.
Good night. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.